that better? Yeah, okay. Well, I'm Dr. Lynn Mikel, as about half of you know, because you're my patients. So it's so nice to have that support and some of my family members. Yes, I'm a breast cancer survivor, but I've been a naturopath for about 20 years, and I practice in Des Moines. I have a nice clinic there. We've got about 8 to 12 part-time practitioners who do everything from physical therapy to massage, um, Reiki, Tai Chi, so it's very eclectic and holistic. And you know, when I opened that clinic, I was very particular about who I brought there. I wanted them to be the best, not that we have to be perfect, but I wanted a resonance, you know, a place where the energy was conducive to kind of my intention. And I've said this a couple times, why do I put myself through this? I mean, it's nerve-wracking to get up in front of a group, and I was just at a conference all weekend, and I really feel like people who are willing to get up and teach in a group or be a public speaker, you know, we've got some passion behind us. There's really a reason we want to be here and what we want to pass on. So I'm just going to jump in here. I think I was about 48 when I was diagnosed with early stage DCIS, ductal carcinoma in situ. And I was a practicing naturopath at that time, and it was really devastating. I mean, I'd lost my first husband to cancer. I thought I was doing really good things. I was trying to eat the kind of diet I was teaching my patients to eat. I was really afraid for my life, even though it was early stage. I had this like crisis of faith in the medicine. So they did a lumpectomy, and 4 of the 6 margins still had cancer to the edge. And they said I had a sort of random abnormal cells all over the place, and I had to do a mastectomy. And I was like, you've got to be kidding. I couldn't believe that. So I got full bore into breast health and how to protect myself from cancer. Worked with a Chinese herbalist, you know, studied all the protocols, did everything I could for a month waiting for that surgery. And then when I did have the surgery, which I debated on having, but I really felt like they were isolated cells. So if I hadn't done the surgery and I wanted to follow what was happening, you couldn't see it on a mammogram. You know, there was really no way to tell if what I was doing was effective. But when I did the mastectomy a month later, they found no cancer cells. So to me, early stage cancer had reversed. Now I can't prove that, but I'm convinced of that. Naturopaths see early stage cancer reverse frequently. And so I felt like that kind of restored my confidence in the medicine and the fact that we can have an outcome with cancer that, you know, defies what science says. So I had this sort of message in my mind. I get these little assignments like this talk that I should write about my story. So I did write about sort of the journey I was going through. It's my psychodrama, really, of what I went through, but also how I faced the medical community. I felt very disillusioned with the medical community and how they treated my husband, who had metastatic lung cancer at diagnosis. They pretty much just wrote him off. They gave him 6 months. And, you know, no matter how good he was doing, he actually lived over 2 years and had really good quality of health for 1.5 years. And we had a little baby at that time, and he had other children. He had a lot to live for. But every time we came in and the tumor markers were good and all that, the doctor would say, you know, it's just a matter of time. Just a matter of time. They kept saying that to him. So, you know, I had to go into the medical system and face this with a lot of resentment and anger. And I did want a good outcome, and I wanted to use allopathic medicine and, you know, appreciate what they had to offer. And luckily, I got really good caregivers. I got really good surgeons. You know, a couple things that I think are part of the system you can't get around. But overall, had a really good outcome. I did go through reconstruction. It's probably the hardest thing I ever had to go through as far as pain. But, you know, I have an okay body, and I'm happy with it. It took a long time to feel comfortable with it and accept it, but I did. While I was going through it, my best friend said to me, "You're going to be a better doctor by going through this." And I just wanted to punch her in the face. Are you kidding? I mean, I was still in the shock, denial, and grief stage, and I couldn't believe she said that. But a couple of weeks later, I thought, if what I learned could keep my daughter from having breast cancer, I would sign up for it. If I can teach her, and now teach my patients, what I learned to have, less of a chance, or if you get it, a better chance of outcome, then, I think in the end she was right. So I have to admit that. It was just hard to hear at the time. So, of course, I learned a lot of good protocols. I'm going to share some of those with you tonight. I learned a lot about estrogen dominance, about how exaggerated hormones affect the growth of abnormal cells. I learned a lot about nutrition, and a lot of that I already knew. I think probably one of the biggest lessons I learned personally was not to have a more perfect diet, not to take more supplements. Patients complain to me they're on 10 things. Well, if they could see my pantry, I have like 2 shelves. So it wasn't about more supplements. It wasn't about a perfect diet. It was really learning how to have fun and relax and let the love in. It was really a journey about taking in support and stepping out of the role of being a caregiver, because I'd been the oldest of 6 kids, responsible my whole life. I'm a really good doctor, but I had to stop that. I had to step out of that role and let myself be nurtured. And luckily I had a lot of women friends. These happened to be my cousins. But I had ladies come out of the woodwork to try to be there for me. Just listen to me, tell me about their story, tell me what they did, just go with me to appointments. So that was new for me. And I would say it was a breakthrough. I have a really good husband, we have a really good life, but I made it more intentional about taking time off, more intentional about how I show up to work, instead of getting my armor on and being really efficient. It's, hey, let's have fun today. Let's connect with the people who come to see me. Let's put an intention that my day flows with ease, efficiency, fun, effectiveness, and prosperity. So I have that little mantra I say every day, and I still say it after, a long time, 15 years, because it really started changing. So one of the things I like to teach is how to be intentional. If you've gone to these talks, this might be a little bit of a repeat, but I've done enough classes in my own clinic to know, even if you've heard some of this information again, you're going to hear something new tonight. So I'd like, hopefully you have a little pencil or pen, or you can think about it in your mind. I want you to think about 2 or 3 things that you want to get out of the talk tonight. What would you like to get? Education. I wouldn't say I don't want to get breast cancer. I would say I want to have healthy breasts. I want to know how to support my mom. Maybe you have a friend, a sister, somebody who's going through this. So think about what you want. Maybe you just want a night to yourself, get out of the house and get a break from the kids. Think about that. Write 2 things down at least. Have those in your mind. And maybe while you're doing that, would anyone share why they decided to come tonight? Why did you decide to come to the class? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm 5 years cancer-free, and it's funny you're in Des Moines, I'm in Des Moines, but to see if there's anything new, I've done
Okay.
a lot of research to hear what you have to say.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Anybody else? Yeah.
Well, my daughter was just recently diagnosed with breast cancer, so I want to support people on education.
Right. Her daughter recently got cancer diagnosis, and she wants to know how to be supportive and maybe learn. Yeah?
Family history of breast cancer. My birth mother had it 3 times, different kinds of breast cancers.
Right. And Dorsey's my first husband's daughter, so thank you for coming, Dorsey. Kind of hard to watch that with your mom, I know. So, yeah, Sandy?
So I had an email a few months ago, and there was a suspicious slide.
Okay.
So then I had to go again to notification for a specialized one. And fortunately, it turned out okay. There was quite the meeting in there. What was going on? So there was my mother
right. So a lot of women will have that. They'll find an abnormal. You got to wait a week, and then you know get the lumpectomy or the pathology on an ultrasound, and then you have to wait, and so that's kind of nerve-wracking. A lot of false positives. So. So my goals for tonight were that you would get educated, feel support, you know, feel like you can do something, that you feel optimistic, you're empowered, that there is something you can do, that there's nice sharing with the audience. What else did I write here? I can't see that well. Promote good products. I'm going to tell you about maybe my top priority of products that I would do. Take mind, body, and spirit medicine to the next level. It's not really just about what we eat and the supplements we take. And be an antidote for this craziness. You know, I really feel like, you know, the world we're living in, it feels like it's falling apart to me. And I get, you know, if I think about it too much, listen to the news too much, read the paper too much, I just like, what? And I just want to go hide somewhere. And you know, I thought I'm going to be 62 at the end of the month, and I thought this is going to be, you know, the easiest part of my life, and I just feel sort of overwhelmed with the problems. And so I feel like, you know, my life in the clinic, my personal life, what I do here, this is what I'm here for. This is what brings me joy. This is what I think I have a purpose for, and I don't want to give up. You know, I think there's hope. And I think things are going to turn out. I guess that's because I have a lot of faith. And in my darkest moments, when, you know, Chuck got cancer, when I had a cancer diagnosis, when my dad was ill, you know, when I think life's sort of bottoming out, somehow there's a new chapter to be revealed. And I'm sure I'm talking to women here who probably have enough life experience to know life does reveal something more when you think you're losing it all. So I think this is sort of, you know, one of those things I'm committed to, and I'm just really grateful I still have the energy and commitment to do it. You know, I don't know where that comes from, but I'm really grateful it's still they're part of me. So when we talk about unhealthy breast cells, you know, the things I learned in medical school is that a cell, when it's damaged enough, especially in the DNA, it loses its ability to regulate how it starts dividing. So either the part of the gene that turns that off or limits, you know, you can replicate once in 10 days, or you can replicate once in a month. Some part of that mechanism gets disrupted and damaged, usually by toxins and inflammation. X-ray and radiation is a part of the damage, maybe one of the, you know, downsides of mammography, and that we're actually assessing or screening with a tool that promotes cancer in some ways. We have genes that are set up by, you know, our parents that, or by our ancestors, or by nutrition, nutritional deficiencies that are kind of preset to maybe go haywire. And then the growth of abnormal cells can be promoted to grow by hormones, especially estrogen. So healthy breasts really involve looking at estrogen dependence, gut health, a diet for healthy hormones, toxins to avoid. We need a healthy detoxification system. We need a healthy neuroendocrine system, meaning a nervous system that's not wired to be on, you know, the sympathetic go, fight or flight mode too much of the time. Healthy thyroid. We need an emotional state or an emotional psyche that has an ability to be fairly balanced. And we need attention to our spirit. So those aren't in order. And it's really hard to present this kind of information because it's not linear. They all interact together. But I'm trying to do, you know, the best I can. I think one of the things that really impacted me, and probably what I learned more about than anything, other than how to connect with women in my life and take in love, was estrogen dominance. So estrogen dominance is when your estrogen levels are higher than progesterone. And when you have estrogen dominance, you often have a lot of these symptoms. You can have, you know, when you're in menopause, a lot of hot flashes, but early on you can have a tendency for cysts to grow, fibrous breast tissue. You can have endometriosis. You can have really bad PMS. You can have sleep disruption. You can have depression. A lot of these things happen from an estrogen-progesterone imbalance. I always like pictures. I think they say a lot more than words. Oh, yeah, I can relate to that lady. And often, this estrogen dominance doesn't just happen post-menopause, which is another time where we're at a little more risk for breast cancer around perimenopause, early menopause. But it can be happening for a long time before. 100 years ago, women had 100 to 200 menstruations, and today they have 350 to 400 times that amount. We're having less children. Every time you had a pregnancy, you stopped your periods for a year, right? So, you know, my mom had, I think, 8 kids, and my dad's mom had 9 kids. My mom had 7 pregnancies, and I had 1. So my relative estrogen load over the course of my life has been a lot greater. And then if you're on the pill, you're on synthetic estrogen, that's often a lot higher than your own or a lot stronger than your own estrogen. It's kind of this estrogen load over time. So again, estrogen dominance is this balance between estrogen and progesterone. We think about estrogen being the hormone that makes the uterine lining grow so you can implant an egg, right? And at ovulation, the ovulating egg makes your progesterone. And that goes for 2 weeks until you don't get fertilized egg, and then it starts falling off. Well, the progesterone in some ways then limits the growth effect of the estrogen. So, you know, when you have a really heavy period, when you're still having periods, it's because your estrogen was greater than that limiting effect of the progesterone. You didn't have enough progesterone to keep that lining from overgrowing. A lot of times that happens in perimenopause. And the big reason for that is that when you're in perimenopause, that 5 to 7 years around the time you stop your period, you miss ovulations. So over a year, maybe you've missed 4 or 5 ovulations, your relative progesterone load is decreasing, but your estrogen is staying the same. So you're in this growth promoting time. And what happens? Women gain, why am I gaining weight? I'm eating just the same. Menopause is this time where women feel like they're gaining weight and they can't control that, or, you know, the whole typical, they're really moody, they, you know, get out of the house. Of course, menopause usually happens when your daughter's in adolescence, so it's really a household, right? I think I was going through it when Christy was 14, and I always say that was her worst year, but maybe it was my worst year, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know if you can see this very well. I wanted to show you what a hormone test looks like, because here I was 48. I got diagnosed with this DCIS, ductal carcinoma in situ. I think I'd stopped my periods for about 8 months. I wasn't quite finished, but nearly. I did a hormone test, and on this test, you can't see it very well, but the first line is testosterone. Do I have a, no, okay. Well, you have the testosterone here, and then you have 3 estrogens, E1, E2, and E3. Now, E1 and E2, that's the only time I'll need it, Elizabeth. It's okay, yeah.
You have this thing over here.
It's fine. So E1 and E2 are your stronger, more growth-promoting hormones. So if they put you on hormone replacement, they usually give you E2 because it's very strong. But that means it has that potential to make cells grow. So E2 and E1 are kind of a little bit more risk, or those are the ones you look at as risk for breast cancer if they're high. E3 is the third one down there, and that's a little more protective. It's an estrogen that does have some growth effect, but actually works as an antioxidant and kind of protects your cells. And then the last line is progesterone. So when I did mine at 48, I couldn't believe my estrogen. E2 and E1 were both over normal. And I mean, I'm not really overweight. I didn't believe that. I couldn't believe it. And my progesterone was about 30 to 40% of normal. So I had this extreme estrogen dominance. My estrogen was like 110%, and my progesterone was about 30%. So I needed to figure out how to change that and figure out why did that happen. There is this I'd say, misinformation in the medical community that when you hit menopause, you don't have estrogen. What they found is when women had hot flashes and they gave them really high synthetic estrogen and synthetic progestin, your hot flashes went away. So they assumed you had low estrogen. Not really. You just overrode your system and gave you more hormones that were a little more balanced, stronger hormones. It's really a problem because now your liver was having trouble anyway with all your estrogen, your natural high estrogen, and now it's got a ton more estrogen to try to detoxify. It's a big risk factor. And then that's why they started taking women off hormone replacement, because more women were getting breast cancer. So that's still, they say, you have low estrogen. Some percentage of women do, and then that's when I find it really useful to do these tests. So if I think about 20% of my patients have low estrogen, and they might have osteoporosis or osteopenia. There might be a rationale to add estrogen and kind of know where your progesterone level and try to balance those two so they're still in a safe range. Hopefully you use bioidentical hormones. That's what I use. The structure of the chemical is exactly like your natural estrogen, so your liver knows more carefully.
You support bioidentical hormones?
When I do testing and a woman needs it, there's many cases that, not many, but
I took that, but I
yeah.
found the opposite now, that that's
Well, I think I'm conservative of all the doctors I know, and I just went to a conference with my colleagues. I'm very conservative. I talked to a lady who's sort of the guru of naturopathic medicine. She's very allopathic. She does lots of hormones. And I just learned from a lady who was much more conservative. She taught us to look at the testing and the numbers and take into account the risk factors. So, I think I was looking at the statistics again. I think 80% of breast cancers are estrogen and progesterone receptor positive, meaning they are being influenced to grow by estrogen, whether it's stuff you're taking or what you're being exposed to. So we really want to look at those hormone imbalances. And yeah, we want relief. I mean, if you're having a bad menopause or you really have bad PMS, you're growing cysts all the time, you definitely want to figure out how to do something about that. None of our family members like it when we're itchy, bitchy, sweaty, sleepy, bloated. We talked about perimenopause a little bit. That time where you're not ovulating, your progesterone level's going down. But we're also exposed to lots of chemicals in the environment that mimic estrogen. So again, I talked about birth control pills, hormone replacements, but all these chemicals in some of the, not the products here, but typically you go to Bartell's and look at the personal care products. A lot of the preservatives, the chemicals at the very end, have a very estrogenic-like quality in that the structure of the chemical looks similar enough to estrogen. It'll sit down on your estrogen receptor and promote it to grow. That's why young girls are having periods as early as 9 years old. I think 13 or 12 is actually the average now, because all these chemicals in the environment. Soy is highly estrogenic, and a little baby girl drinking soy milk, she probably is one that's set up to have her periods early or be a little more at risk. But there's lots of chemicals in personal care products. There's lots of antibiotics and pesticides and herbicides in the food, which are also estrogen-like molecules. In the literature, they'll be called endocrine disruptors. Well, our ovaries, our thyroid gland, our adrenal glands are part of our endocrine system. It's just really a fancy way of saying estrogen. So, this is a great store. I mean, it feels like a second home now. We just moved here really close from Berrien to Auburn, and I'm here like twice a week now, and I feel like I'm, in the clinic, I feel really at home here now. And, if you can have a good Marlene's or PCC, where the employees and Marlene herself have researched the products that will be at less risk to you. Nobody else is doing that. You can do it yourself, but if you've got these, ethical store owners who are invested in promoting health and education in the community, we're the ones that are going to change what's happening. It's our buying power that changes the industry. So look how the organics and conscientious products have become more and more of a big market because that's where our dollars are going. And 80% of grocery shopping is still done by women. So women have a big influence. And, if it's great to start, donating to political campaigns or giving it to organizations that are helping the environment. But every time you spend maybe, 30 cents more or a dollar more on a personal care product because it's clean, you're influencing what's happening in the world and how we're destroying Mother Nature, really. And our bodies are a reflection of the mother, the big mother. So, so again, all these chemicals, I don't like to freak people out because, you can kind of freak yourself out. My office is right under the airport. And, we're exposed to so many things every day. If you're commuting to work, you're on the freeway exposed to diesel. You might be in a sick building. A lot of our poor teachers are in old schools and there's mold. There's lots of stuff we can't protect ourselves from, but we have an amazing liver, kidney, lymphatic system that are really designed to take care of these chemicals. And they can do a really good job in breaking those chemicals down, making them water soluble, excreting them through our urine, our feces. But they can get overworked and underfunctioning. So I don't know. I must really be a geek because I love biochemistry. I never thought I'd say that, but the liver has to degrade estrogen in a way that there can be 4 potential metabolites. You can see the 2 at the top, the O2s, are the protective ones. And if the liver is faulty, doesn't have the right chemicals, or is underfunctioning, overburdened, you can produce 2 metabolites, the O6 or the 16-OH and the 4-OH, that are very growth promoting. They're actually a toxic estrogen. And how do you know if you're doing that? You can do more urine tests, and you can test to see how your liver is metabolizing estrogen. Because if you have that 16-OH and 4-OH, you're at risk because that estrogen, you always have some abnormal cells around. That's a growth promotion from those chemicals. So what can we do? I'm going to talk about specifically what to do about that metabolism of estrogen in the liver. But overall, I do detoxification groups. We can start paying attention to our diet. We can do supports that help the liver do a better job. We think, I'm 20 pounds overweight. How could I not have the nutrients to fuel my liver? Well, a lot of times our weight gain is really a result of toxins that are being stored. Our fat cells are a reservoir for toxins the liver can't handle. So when when you're gaining 5 pounds a year and you're eating about the same, you really have to think about what are you being exposed to and how much of a load does the liver have, and is some of that just being stored? It's trying to protect your nervous system, your vital organs, and so really when we do detox groups, it's kind of learning how to eat a whole food diet for a few weeks, get the digestive system back on track, and then as the liver isn't burdened by toxic food, it can start upregulating and moving out your toxins. We always get results. I just finished a 2-week class, and we lost between about 4 and 15 pounds in 2 weeks. And some people come for the weight loss, but more than that, they come to have the support to figure out how to stay off of their sort of bad foods, their cravings, for 2 weeks. And you get a lot of support when other women are trying to do it. You get some of this education. This last group, we stressed more sort of that psycho-emotional support that we're trying to offer one another versus so much of the lecture. But there's a lot of results in even a short amount of time. The reason I do it is it's your experience with your diet that's going to impact how and you're able to make that a lifestyle change. Just me telling you, eat your cruciferous vegetables, stop gluten, that doesn't mean much unless you do it for 2 or 3 weeks and see how you feel. So that's really why I do the groups, because everyone needs support to do that, including me. So for healthy hormones, we really need to eliminate those food sensitivities because they're becoming a big part of our toxic load. Wheat and dairy are the #1 and #2. In fact, on the conference this week, somebody said, in everybody's clinic, we just should have a sign at the store, please be ready to give up wheat and dairy. Because I'm not the only naturopath that teaches this. And I think we're all learning that the way they've processed wheat and the way they've processed cow milk has destroyed the protein in the food. So you might as well be eating plastic. The body cannot really break it down into microscopic pieces anymore. Big proteins stay in the gut, irritate the gut lining, eventually get in the bloodstream, and then we have a food sensitivity or a food allergy. And when you have inflammation in the gut, guess what? You're not really absorbing the nutrients you need, the B vitamins, the antioxidants, the minerals, to fuel your liver and to fuel your kidneys and to rebuild your cells when they start getting inflamed. So even though we're overweight, our culture is dramatically nutrient deficient. So when you do take in good products, you might as well be, kind of throwing your money away if you're not also working on your digestive health. You're going to get way more out of those. And sometimes those products help the healing, but if you're never taking away the irritant, you're only going to get so-so results. But nobody does it overnight. I mean, it took me a year to give up wheat, so, And then I gave up bread, but not cookies. And then it took another year to give up the cookies. So I'm just like everybody else. You don't have to give them up completely, but at least 80%. You can't be repeating a food every day and not allowing the gut to kind of get over that little irritation. It's sort of like keep opening up a wound. You have to let it heal. So eat more vegetables. I just love the idea that God, our higher power, somebody knew what foods would heal us. Guess what? Plant food. It's not Cheerios, it's not Doritos, it's not a Snickers bar. Plant food. And if you research any fruit or vegetable, you're going to find anti-cancer information on that food. One thing that's fairly new in science is the science of epigenetics, meaning that the ability to turn a gene off to, keep replication in check, or to turn a gene on to express healthy insulin. All of that has to do with methylation. There's pieces around the DNA that influence the gene's expression or keep it quiet. And all this epigenetics is done through methyl groups, which are carbon and hydrogen groups. And guess what foods are made from hydrogen and carbon? Plants. So they are magic. And, you can do studies, you can go to clinics, but really the fruits and vegetables are what heal us. So, and I'd say the processed food is probably what's killing us. So, again, hormone-free. And one thing, we'll emphasize here is your cruciferous vegetables. Remember the little chart with the 4 ways you can metabolite estrogen, and the 2 at the top were healthy, the 2 at the top or at the bottom were unhealthy, more carcinogenic, more growth promoting. Well, it's the indole-3 carbonyls or the cruciferous vegetables that have this phytochemical that allow your liver to detox estrogen so it goes to those healthy metabolites. Now, this is really important, and you can just say that those cruciferous vegetables are your friend. Every woman should be eating those frequently, at least 3 or 4 times a week. And, not a huge amount. You can eat half a cup or so, but they should more often be cooked than raw because cruciferous vegetables also have this potential to leach iodine when they're raw, which could have a negative impact on your thyroid gland. But, if you have a kale salad or you put a little kale in your smoothie, that's fine. But do cook your cruciferous vegetables. And for those of you who do, you probably know that roasting your cruciferous vegetables make them much sweeter, tender, more palatable. So nobody likes Brussels sprouts, or very few people like Brussels sprouts, maybe if they're boiled. But if you put them in the oven at 400 degrees with some olive oil, they almost are a different, animal. They're delicious. So get yourself comfortable with that. Make a big batch, put some in the fridge to snack on or to add to a salad later. That's your kind of magic food for breast health. Now, men, there is a couple men here in the audience. I really appreciate that. Men have a similar thing with testosterone. When they don't metabolize testosterone very well in the liver, they get a metabolite that's more growth promoting to the prostate gland. Again, tissue that's sensitive to the prostate to grow. So the number 2 cancers behind lung are breast and prostate cancer. These hormone-induced cancers, because guess what? All these endocrine disruptor chemicals in the environment. So the men's formulas often have saw palmetto, which is an herb that helps the male livers metabolize their testosterone. So they're less likely to have that dihydrotestosterone that's growth promoting. Again, sort of a toxic testosterone. You can find a lot of products with the indole-3-carbinol. They're the DIM products, and Elizabeth got a few here that they have in the clinic. I know she has a whole section of female breast health. You're probably in the menopause section or something like that, but I have one that I've formulated and I'm having really good results with. I have 2 different ones I use a lot, and so it's very protective for anybody. Women that have PMS, if you've got a lot of cysts growing or fibrous tissue, you're in menopause, you just want to have healthy breasts, it's very protective for you to add a type of DIM product. And I'm not really a big fan of high doses all the time, and I'm really a fan of rotating things, changing up the product. Now, when people make nutraceuticals, turn herbs into sort of a medicine, they often extract this one indole-3-carbinol, this one portion of the plant, and concentrate it. There's some value in that because a lot of the studies will be done on that part of the chemical from the plant, but the plants work synergistically. The plant itself has a lot of other, cofactors, minerals, and so most products that I recommend have some of the whole food in it as well to kind of work synergistically with that maybe concentrated part. And I think you often get better results and minimize side effects. So again, we've talked about this nutrition, malnutrition, overburdened detoxification system, kind of healthy digestion again, cornerstone to health. I talked about a little bit that leaky gut or that gut lining that gets inflamed. Our gut really is made like this. It has all these little outpooches. Really increases the surface area for absorption of nutrients. But when you're eating rancid food or food you can't break down very well, you get a lot of inflammation and those villi get kind of flattened out. They actually get destroyed and damaged. So, this is a gut where you see sort of rotting food, putrefying food, and when you have GERD or you're bloating all the time, belching, or, your stools are rather smelly and it hurts to go, that's a sign that there's inflammation anywhere from the throat to the colon. And this leaky gut's a big problem, not only because we're not getting the nutrients we need. A big portion of our toxic load becomes these proteins we can't digest. So if you're gaining that 5 pounds a year, sometimes it's just a food in your diet over time that's become the biggest burden. When we do those detox groups and in 3 weeks take out those foods, hey, guess what? My tummy went down like 3 inches and I'm not bloated anymore. It really can quickly heal. Just think if you get a little sore in your mouth, you bite your cheek or something, probably the next day it's well, right? So, restoring gut health. Stop eating wheat and dairy. Eat more of those clean proteins, healthy oils, fruits and vegetables. Reduce your processed food. I mean, we have it in the house, mostly because I'm trying to fatten my husband up a little bit. you're going to have something now and then. It's nice to have a treat. But if you can learn to have something that's comforting, that also is good for you. I might have a banana with some nut butter, or maybe a bowl of cherries with, and cut up some kiwi in it or something. I try to find snacks that are a little easier on my gut. I feel better when I eat them. Stop the white sugar for sure. White sugar, when you get a cancer diagnosis, everyone thinks sugar is making those cancer cells grow. What sugar does is it stimulates insulin, right? And insulin allows the sugar into the cell. But insulin in itself is a growth hormone. And when insulin gets triggered, other growth hormones come in because they're trying to get this stuff into your cells and build you up. So if you have a bunch of abnormal cells, a big tumor mass or something, those growth hormones know they're like attracted to that place that's already growing. So it's actually the growth hormones that are really dangerous from sugar. Enzymes when you eat your meal. Often as we get older, I hate that saying, don't you? But when you're under stress, we don't make as many enzymes. As we get older, a lot of our enzymes are diverted to clean up inflammation. And then we're a little deficient for our digestion. So it takes a lot of energy and a lot of nutrients to make enzymes in the body. And a lot of times they're deficient. If those enzymes can't cleave your food into tiny, tiny microscopic particles, again, you get food proteins too large, the food just sits there. Or if you're eating casein and gluten from wheat, the enzymes don't match. The protein doesn't look like protein, and it keeps trying, but eventually it's just kind of a waste. So add probiotics. Probiotics aren't necessarily enzymes. They're the healthy bacteria in the gut that maintain a pH so your enzymes work correctly. So I like to take the probiotic at night on an empty stomach, kind of let that gut get reinstated with the healthy flora. And then hopefully the pH is better, your enzymes you make and the enzymes you take are working better throughout the day. There's a whole lecture you could do on probiotics and the value they have for the gut and for the brain, but we won't do that tonight. I do like to try a variety of foods. I found out on this last detox I did with my group that it's my almond milk latte in the morning that is causing me to gain weight. So I'm like, what? I do a decaf, it's almond milk, no sugar, I use a little stevia, but I have it every morning, and I think I've had it every morning for 8 years. And my body, as soon as I stopped that, I dropped like 2.5 pounds. Like, what? And so I did really good till like day 10, and then, okay, I'm gonna have one. I gained 2 pounds. So I really figured out, not just from that, but from other times, that it's the same food every day. If I do food allergy testing, it's going to be the food you don't want to give up, that you like to have every day. It might be your yogurt. It could be that little, skinny ice cream bar. It's the certain cheese stick you like. But whatever you're eating every day and you don't want me to tell you to stop it, guess what? That you might be getting a sensitivity to that food, having trouble. Because look, your body's taking the same nutrients every day to try to handle that. And like I said, a lot of us are nutrient deficient even though we don't know that. So improved digestion, I think I've beat that into the ground, right? We talked about that estrogen dominance, why we're getting it, and how many of us are surprisingly in estrogen dominance. It's 1 in 7 women now that have this potential to get breast cancer. That's more than 10%. And when I had my experience, I was going to a Chinese herbalist. She had a 7 and 11-year-old girl with breast cancer. So it's happening to younger women. It's happening to more women. It's happening to men. It's a big problem. And I think, of all the things you can do, if you take that one seriously and, are proactive about that, it could really overall help and cut your risk factor a lot. We talked about gut health, how important that is, a diet for healthy hormones, eating those cruciferous vegetables, toxicity, keep shopping at Marlene's, take that seriously, the neuroendocrine influence and the psychodrama, your psychospiritual life. So let's fast forward through here. We talked about those toxins, good estrogen, bad estrogen, repair and recovery.